Hello, I'm back to review Neuromancer by William Gibson. This did take me a little bit to do because this book just took me longer to read than I thought it would. It's very confusing. I'm going to get into it in just a second. At this point in time, when I recorded, I've already started my next book, so I know that this went up a bit later than I wanted to, but it's okay. We're already in it. I'm already in the trenches with the next book. Not in a bad way, though. Like, I'm there with the book, supporting it on, rooting it on. However you want to take it. Okay, so Neuromancer, this is my first experience with the book where, like, the mini that I created, wow! This is the first time when the mini I created doesn't actually match the book that I got from the library. I knew this would happen at some point, especially makes sense for it to happen to Neuromancer when it has so many editions. This is a newer edition, the one that I made the mini of, and I knew this was a newer edition. I don't actually know what year this edition of the book came out, but I thought it was cool and striking, so I made the mini of it. But then they made this one back in 2016 or something. They made a bunch of like these hardcover sci-fi classics, and so that's the one that was at my library. They had a paperback as well, but that paperback was like falling apart, so I grabbed this one instead. But that has nothing to do with the review. Let's review the book. But let me tell you about Neuromancer by William Gibson. Neuromancer is probably the most well-known as the grandfather of the cyberpunk genre as we know it today. Neuromancer is a fever dream vision of a not-so-distant future. This was more or less the first book published that imagined society fully entrenched in a digital world. It was published in 1984. And Neuromancer was written a little too early for the World Wide Web, but the story surrounds this global, all-encompassing digital world called the Matrix. Our main character, Case, is an expert at navigating cyberspace and is known as an expert at stealing data from companies and individuals. That is, until his now ex-employer crippled his nervous system, preventing Case from being able to enter the Matrix at all. Case now finds himself living in what we would now know is a cyberpunk iteration of Japan. He's doing like data information swapping, but more analog style. I guess that part doesn't matter. What does matter is that he's approached by a mysterious new employer, and he's given a quick fix to all his physical ailments through like surgery. The catch for this after he receives the surgery is that Case must now embark on a high-stakes heist with a highly augmented assassin, a bot of a dead mentor, and an ex-Cold War soldier person. The resulting adventure inarguably changed the landscape of sci-fi forever. Ultimately, though, this book is really difficult to review. On one hand, it's painfully obvious that this is William Gibson's first novel. Gibson seemed to really like environmental storytelling, as Case pretty much explains nothing about his world, and you just kind of have to pick up on things as you are reading through the story. I liked this to a degree. Unfortunately, I found myself having to reread many passages because the writing is vague at times and just plain bad in others, to the point where it's like, wait, what happened? Hold on, and then I would have to reread a whole page. One of the reasons this took me a bit longer to finish. But actually, this book was a reread for me, so I thought I would have remembered more about this book, but I didn't. I know it had been like maybe 10 years since I read it, but I am pretty good at remembering like, basic plot points of a book years after I've read it, but this just didn't work. It didn't stick with me at all, probably because this book reads like a literal dream. Not just a fever dream, just like a literal dream, like things happening that are just like coming out from nowhere type of situations. Sort of. It's, again, difficult to describe. However, this book is considered one of the sci-fi greats for a reason. While reading this novel, I think you need to remind yourself that this was written in the 1980s. A lot of Gibson's ideas of what tech will look like in this dystopia that he's created, while naming brands that still exist today but have a completely different like shape than they did in the 80s, it comes off as a bit goofy. Also, considering that's in the 1980s, I'm not even going to touch on how Molly is written. That would be an entire other video to talk about all of that, to be honest with you. That aside, Gibson frames society in the future as extremely dependent on technology. Country lines are blurred as this world became smaller because of the cyberspace that you can navigate, but at the same time, people's individual relationships are distancing due to the same technology. And also, capitalism is running rampant and still ruining lives. Yay! I actually think my biggest issue with this novel is it's 100% subjective, but there's just no hope for humanity in this novel. And even if I think that's a realistic take, I'm reading a book and I would honestly prefer a silver lining of hope in the story that I'm reading. But regardless of any of that, I truly do respect this novel for what it is. It's kind of a mess, but it's a mess with really good ideas and with a lot of accuracy, I think, to the reality that we live in currently. And like all of these pieces of media would have looked different. I think all of these pieces of media would still exist, but they would look very different without Neuromancer and the huge splash it made in 1984 when it released. It's hard. Like, I recommend this book to anyone who is a diehard sci-fi fan and just hasn't read this book yet. It's like necessary reading, I think. If you like any of the media I just showed, you should read it because it's kind of like reading the blueprint for it. And blueprint's too strong of a word, but it's like reading the ancient scripts almost for what we now view as modern cyberpunk today. I don't recommend this to you if you are just reading it to try to understand where it's coming from. Like, if you don't have any interest in sci-fi and you don't have any interest in cyberpunk, honestly, as a genre, I actually don't really recommend reading this. If you work in tech, sure, but otherwise it's like, I just don't. I honestly think this book is quite confusing to read. It's not a book that I would be like, oh, you haven't read in a while? Oh yeah, go pick up this book. No, there's so many other books. Pick like any other, read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep instead by Philip K. Dick. I think that book is a bit more linear and not so dream-like. So, I don't know. Really hard book to review. I respect this book for what it is, and I did enjoy parts of it. But yeah, it's hard to recommend it to other people. Yeah, no. Maybe just watch The Matrix or something. Moving on. So, I'm just gonna pull a book now. I actually haven't finished Neuromancer at this point, but I'm about done with it, and I need to know what's next. Because I'm going on an impromptu road trip, so I want to know if I can grab an audiobook or something, if that's necessary or not. It might not be, depending on what I draw, but I wanted to know. So here is my book box with all of the books in it, and the slips of paper that are like books prompts instead of books. Okay, so I still have really my goal at this point, the goal of this entire challenge was to read everything that's on my to-be-read shelf, and I haven't gotten one of those in a long time. So it'd be really cool if I could get one, but I don't have to. I mean, I'm seriously up for anything. It would be neat if it was something I can get as an audiobook, but it doesn't have to be. As per usual, let's see how it goes. I'm going to stick my hand in here. I'm going to look for a second. Shutting my eyes. I just feel like, This one. What is it? It's a book? Oh, it is one of my books. Yay! It's one of my books. I'm gonna go grab my book. Ta-da! With movie magic, I flipped my camera and now you can see it. Yay! Okay, so this is Ever After by F.T. Lukens. F.T. Lukens is one of my favorite authors, but I haven't read all of their books yet. I just finished Love at Second Sight. I loved it, and I've read Otherworldly and Spellbound as well, and I really liked both of those. This is like one of the earlier books, but I'm super excited to read it. And the little mini guy matches. Yay! So I think, let me read what this book is about. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's about a group of people. It's like, what would happen after you complete the prophecy that says that you're going to save the entire kingdom. And now they saved the kingdom, and now they just have to live their life. So what's the happily ever after going to look like? Here's the back of the book too. It has some cute art on it. You can kind of read, you can read the synopsis if you want to. Yeah, I think this book is like quite a bit more fantasy forward than the other books that I've read by F.T. Lukens. They're fantasy books, but they take place in like modern day society. What you would expect to experience in your day-to-day life, but with a fun magical twist. And this is like a true fantasy world, so I don't know how it's gonna go, but I am excited. I am interested. Okay, I'll be back soon.